Mentor text identity writing. This is a nice project which I just saw a teacher doing a few weeks ago in her class, and wanted to bring it in to share it. I'm sure have heard what a mentor text is, a text that students will use as a pattern to write their own work. And in this case, again, the students are having the opportunity to write their own books and infuse their own experiences. This is a very nice book called At the Same Moment Around the World. And the teacher read this book with the class, and they did some various activities. It has a kind of a pullout where the world is divided into the 24 time zones, and then each one of the 24 pages in the book shows what's happening to a child at that particular hour as the world spins around during its 24-hour revolution. So here's one of the pages, what the child is doing in an area. And what this teacher did was she had all of her English language learners write pages which they made into their own book on what their friends, their family, and what would be happening in their countries where they came from at that same moment. And I just thought it was a really nice concept what she did. So there's some of the different students' work they presented. And I also just throwing out there some different examples of things that you could potentially choose if you wanted to use mentor texts, which help kids to bring in this area of investing their own identity. Things like this, like animals say things in different languages, right? Kids love to share that. So that's a book called Animals Speak. Here's another one, Houses Across the World. Again, another little seedling idea for some type of mentor text project. This is another one, markets around the world. Lots of different ideas, but I think there's a lot you can do with the mentor text. A lot of you are doing middle school, right? Okay, so this is a fantastic project which you will be able to go home tomorrow, find on the web, locate 25 different books and all the accompanying resources. This is the Making Good Choices Financial Literacy Series, developed by ERGO, which is our provincial subject association for ESL and ELD coordinators. A few years ago, the Ministry of Education was doing a lot of teacher development and support in schools for financial literacy learning. And all the different subject associations got grants to develop materials aimed at promoting financial literacy through their own particular subject area. And this is the project that was developed through our coordinator, ESL Coordinator Association. And it is an identity text, because what you're going to see here are student-created books by newcomer students, anywhere from grade 6 all the way up through high school, about different aspects of money and the way we need to use money and credit and getting a bank account and a credit card and all those different things. The kids put them all together and created these books, which you can find online free for you to use. And there's just a sampling of some of the different ones. Now, when you go to the website, and we'll try to do that now, you'll find not only the student and teacher co-created identity textbooks, but you'll also find guided reading lessons for use with each book, a 3-part math lesson, and you can also queue it up so that the books will be read aloud to you right from the web, which is great for the kids who are using them in the classrooms. There's just an example of some of the guided reading and math things that are included. There are some very simple books for brand new students and getting to know the money and so on. This is one that was about 2 teenage boys came here from Somalia, and they had this experience which they built up into the book. They went to the store to buy some things. It was one of their first times in Canada, and they didn't know about tax. So they only brought enough money to actually pay for the sticker price of the chocolate bar or whatever it was. And the cashier said it's going to be more money because there is something called tax. It was a good thing we had some extra your money and you pay the final total. And now here are some of our questions after having paid tax for the first time. Why didn't we pay tax in our countries? And that's a really good question to talk about, especially with older kids. Do we have to pay taxes on everything we buy? That'd be a great project for kids to do some research on. And this is my favorite question. What does the government in Canada do with the tax money? So this is the website. All you have to do is Google the ESL ELD Resource Group of Ontario, or it's a very simple website to remember, ergo-on.ca. Anne Woomert, the teacher who created many of those books, with the two students who did the We Pay the Tax story. Another example of a really great identity tax. We're going to end up with a couple of projects from the high school panel. This project is from Earl Haig Secondary School up at Yonge and Shepherd. And in this case, the ESL head of that school, Janet Schundler, partnered together with the Gibson House Museum. Have any of you ever been to that museum? Okay, you have been there. It's like a historical museum of kind of early Canadian settler life. They were doing an exhibit on New Year's traditions in the 1800s, and she got this idea, why can't we do this from our ESL class and participate? So she approached the museum, and the end result was that the kids produced a whole room and an actual museum exhibit in an actual museum where people come and look at these things. And they did New Year's traditions in their home countries. They prepared all of the museum display cards and brought in the artifacts to match. So they've shared stories of their own New Year's traditions. So this is a student, a high school student from Iran, writing about Nowruz, the Persian New Year. And they brought in different artifacts and actually created various displays. And I just think this is such a beautiful representation of a multimodal identity text that has an artistic aspect, has text, and it has this multimedia aspect. It's a real museum exhibit. How many of you have read The Awesome Book? Okay, some of you are familiar with it. This is a project that the high school in general was doing, an awesome project where they, if you're not familiar with the Awesome Project and the website 1,000 Awesome Things, those are just those little things in your day that they're small things, but they're just like just a nice sigh when it happens, like getting the armrest at the movie theater so that you can put your arm down there, or the final seconds of untangling a big knot. So in the school, they did a big butcher poster display. What's awesome in your day? And they all picked different small things. There's lots of things about classes being canceled and somebody pulling the fire alarm before an exam. Late start to the day. Wi-Fi. You know when you go somewhere and it's so nice, it's free Wi-Fi. So these are not the English language learners. The whole school did this in one of the main halls. And then she capitalized on this by having the kids write their own book of awesome. Anybody? Half of the Canaan fans know that. So Canaan's original name was Kenan Warsame. And he was one of my students in the early 1990s at Kipling Collegiate, which was then part of the Etobicoke Board of Education, after he came with his family from Somalia to Canada. And in recent years, in addition to all of his musical accomplishments, Kenan wrote a children's book called Waving Flag. And here's what the book looks like, story behind Waving Flag. And some of our teachers in the secondary panel used this concept to make a digital story. The kids who did this digital story in our high school program, our kids in our LEAP program, many of whom have never been to school before. And before this, they didn't really have any experience working with computers. They certainly didn't know how to program the music or anything like that.
The students in this photo story are from Gimon Secondary School. We read the story when I got older. The story behind Waving Flag by Kana Nusolgai. In this book, Kana tells his story about moving to Canada. We will now tell you how we wrote the digital story about our journey to Canada.
Before we wrote our story, we looked at some digital story that others to the road.
We wrote about life in our country.
We wrote about our journey to Canada.
We wrote about our lives in Canada.
We practiced making presentation for our story.
We told our story to the class.
We made a flyer or picture to use on our stories.
We like to find a picture to make our story more interesting.
We tabbed our story onto our pictures in Photo Story 3.
It took many days to write our digital stories. Sometimes we work on our stories on our spare.
Before we recorded our story, we practiced singing it clearly. We recorded our story into Photo Story 3.
We checked our work to make sure it was our best.
Listen carefully to our story, record it again if we do like it. Watched our stories many times. We are proud of our stories.
We even recorded a how-to photo story.
I live with my family. I lived in Addis Ababa. I lived in a bigger house with my family. I like playing with my friends and running around. I had a lot of friends, then I missed them. I used to play soccer with my friends back home in Ethiopia. I left Ethiopia because my dad told me I have to live with him. When I left Ethiopia, I felt sad and I want to go back again. When I arrived in Canada, I felt happy to living with my dad. When I saw snow first time, I felt happy. Learning English was easy for me. One thing I hear about Canada is winter. Mohammed became my best friend. Let's get it. One thing I like to do with my friends is go to movies and chill. Thank you for listening.